Taylor Swift, for lack of a better term, is the music industry. So let's talk about it. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Ali and today school is back in session. As you may know, I love making deep dives of things, whether that be an album, a concept, an artist. However, today we're doing something that I wanted to do for a very long time, and that is an introductory course. So today, instead of diving deep, I am skimming the surface and teaching you all the basics, aka Taylor Swift 101. And in fact, I was going to make a Taylor Swift 101 video with kind of everything you need to know. That was my full plan. And in writing my notes for this, I realized it's simply not possible. I couldn't do it. So instead I am making a series. So this is episode 1. I just realized I simply could not condense all of my knowledge and like what I deem to be essential into one video. I figured that would be a lot more palatable, a lot more digestible, and for me, honestly, a lot more fun. So I already have a few things planned, but as always, I would love to hear from you guys if there are any topics or themes that you think I definitely need to tackle in this series. I first had this idea when a friend of mine mentioned earlier that she had witnessed the phenomenon that was the Eras Tour and felt FOMO, like she wanted to be a part of this collective joy that we all experience, that is being a Swiftie, but didn't quite know where to begin. I mean, when someone's career spans over 18 years and many different genres, I can understand how that seems pretty intimidating. So my hope is that I can put together this little intro course to help people on their journey to becoming a Swiftie. It is hard to explain just how successful and impactful she is, but today I'm gonna do my best. I personally feel very lucky to have been a fan since the beginning of Taylor's career. It's truly an honor and a joy, but I know that there are a lot of people that are just discovering her recently, and I think a lot of the things I discuss on my channel and a lot of the things you might want to consume from other amazing creators might be a little bit confusing without that essential backstory first. So I guess this can also serve as like, not homework, but an aid to understanding some of my more in-depth or analytical videos. The videos on my channel, and that definitely includes this, are for absolutely everyone, whether you have been a fan since self-titled or yesterday, or are maybe not even a fan yet but are a little bit curious. I want everyone to feel really welcome here. Ideally, my hope is that people can send this to, you know, their partner, their dad, their friend who is wanting to dip their toes but doesn't really know where to begin.
That was the last time you ever saw me. Wait, what? Oh my god. Crying.
Isn't it amazing? Some of my favorite comments that I ever receive are like, I'm not your or Taylor's typical demographic. I'm a 76-year-old man living in X country. Like, I think it just shows the worldwide accessibility of Taylor and her music. It reaches so many different kinds of people. So no matter who you are, where you are, I love you and thank you for being here. Oh my god, speaking of, we hit 200,000 subscribers. I'm pretty much still speechless about that, so I don't really know what to say besides thank you so much. I don't know if you can fully understand how much that's changed my life, how much joy this brings to me. Yeah, I know that not many people get to do their dream job, and I don't take a second of that for granted. So to everyone that is subscribed, thank you so much. I truly love you. And if you aren't subscribed and would like to see more from this series, you can subscribe down below. You can also give this video a like if you would like to. Just a free way to help out my channel. But yeah, I am just truly so excited about this. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard stories about dads who took their daughters to see the Eras Tour and are now witnessing the phenomenon that is Taylor Swift, or people who maybe believed things that the media said about Taylor and are now wanting to catch up and see what they missed out on. So today I hope you can learn a few things, maybe unlearn a few things. So I think people realize that Taylor is a pop star. She's quite successful. They know she's a big deal, but maybe don't realize just quite how much. This is not just a fun singer that young girls like, although if she were, there would be nothing wrong with that. I do think teenage girls are the cornerstone of pop culture. This is an artist that has now won Album of the Year at the Grammys more times than anyone else in history. Until earlier this year, Taylor was tied with Frank Sinatra, Stevie Wonder, and Paul Simon, until Midnights gave her her record-breaking 4th win.
And the Grammy goes to Taylor Swift.
All I want to do is keep doing this. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do what I love so much.
There is a fantastic quote from this book that I think describes Taylor's impact, and that is, "There's nobody that you can compare her to, not even the greats. The Beatles' whole run as recording artists lasted 8 years, yet at that point, she was just taking off with 1989. I also really love this. Her Eras tour is such a blockbuster, it's hard to place it into industry perspective. The revenue in just 2023 was $1 billion, more than the next two biggest tours, Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen, combined." I was saying to someone last night at an event that I don't think we'll truly understand or appreciate the magnitude of Taylor's success until we've kind of zoomed out and years have gone by from right now. You know, when we are truly still living in the peak of her career, which I do believe will continue for a lot longer. Taylor's producer and collaborator Jack Antonoff once said,
"No one is this good and works harder. And if you're that good, usually you don't work that hard."
Taylor is the rare example of both. And to paraphrase my friend's husband, if nothing else, she's a grinder.
What'd you learn from opening for Taylor Swift on this last tour?
I feel like I learned that I need to step up my fucking game.
Really?
That's what I learned, yeah. I think everyone who warmed up for her, that's like, everyone is just like, no, I'm stepping up my game.
To discuss her cultural impact, we have to talk about Taylor's version. So what is that? Let's start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start.
In 2005, when Taylor was just 15 years old, she signed a 13-year recording deal with Big Machine Records, owned at the time by Scott Borchetta.
I signed Taylor Swift to Big Machine Records because I had to.
I was the first artist that he talked to about his new label, and I sat down and I played him some songs live, and there was just this instant connection.
There were some really unique qualities about the package. There was an Abercrombie and Fitch catalog that was clipped to a picture of Taylor. Very attractive girl. You couldn't tell whether she was 14 or 21, and at that time she was 14.
Electric chair.
Taylor was their first and only client at this time, so her success really helped to build that company to become what it was. And that close client-manager relationship allowed Taylor to view Scott as family. She even recorded a cover of Scott's favorite song and put it on her second album, Fearless, which is something she had never done before and has never done since, I think showing how much he meant to her at that time. During her years under Big Machine Records, she released 6 albums, and while the contract allowed her to own the publishing rights, they owned the masters, aka like the final finished product of that song and all of the rights to that. So if anyone wanted to license her songs, use the music in any way, they had that call. But more on that in a moment. Once this contract expired after putting out her 6th album, Reputation, Taylor attempted to purchase the masters so that she could have ownership of her own music, but was denied the opportunity. At this time, by the way, Taylor's music accounted for 80% of Big Machine Records' revenue. So
I couldn't get up in the morning and not have her as part of this label.
Yeah, I bet.
I hate that what came into my mind was the lyric, "I made that bitch famous," but if the shoe fits.
Lately, there's been a new shift that has affected me personally and that I feel is a potentially harmful force in our industry. And that is the unregulated world of private equity coming in and buying up our music as if it is real estate.
They offered to sell the rights back to Taylor only if she renewed the deal for another decade, and also would have to earn back one album at a time by giving them one new one in exchange, effectively keeping her trapped. It's like some kind of evil villain from a fairy tale. I don't know if it's, am I thinking of Rumpelstiltskin, who wants to own her firstborn child? But when people make references to Taylor being similar to Ariel from The Little Mermaid and kind of having to sign away her voice, this is what we're talking about.
If you want to cross a bridge, my sweet, you've got to pay the toll. Take a gulp and take a breath and go ahead and sign the scroll.
So in 2019, Scooter Braun, owner of Ithaca Holdings, investor and manager of many well-known artists, and pretty much Taylor's arch nemesis, bought Big Machine Records and therefore Taylor's masters. And devastatingly, Taylor found out about this business deal at the same time the rest of the world did.
I found out when it was online, like when it hit the news.
And you didn't smell it?
No. I knew he would sell my music. I knew he would do that. I couldn't believe who he sold it to because we've had endless conversations about Scooter Braun, and he has 300 million reasons to conveniently forget those conversations.
This was a man who represented people who had bullied and shamed Taylor, and Scooter himself had also participated in this. Scooter was also involved in the creation of a music video that contained revenge porn of Taylor, depicting her naked body next to Kanye West in bed. Now, if you want to know more about this whole saga, before I make an in-depth video on it for the re-release of Reputation next year, I highly recommend checking out Miss Americana. That documentary is fantastic. Or an even more up-to-date resource that I love and have been using in preparation for this video, which is the book I mentioned earlier. This is Heartbreak is the National Anthem: How Taylor Swift Reinvented Pop Music by Rob Sheffield. Rob is a writer for Rolling Stone and has heard a lot of Taylor's albums early, before release, in Taylor's own living room. So I think if there is anyone qualified to write about Taylor's music, it is very much Rob. One of my favorite things I learned from this book is about 2 of my all-time favorite songs, and it makes me feel so embarrassed that I didn't realize this. Let me read this out. Also, I am someone someone that makes marks in their books. Let me know how you guys feel about that and if you do the same. One of the first things you discover in the Taylorverse, there are no accidents. She plans everything in advance. She'll use the word marvelous in the song Starlight about the Kennedys and fancy New England society.
I said, oh my, what a marvelous tune.
Then file it away for years, waiting for the right moment until slipping it into another song about fancy New England society, the last great American dynasty.
She had a marvelous time, ruining everything.
An invisible string connecting two stories, two songs, two Taylors that only the most obsessive fans are going to even notice. New fans might be like, what do you mean? It's just a word. But like, the girls that get it, get it. I just can't believe I missed that. And there are so many other things in this book that just took me by surprise and delighted me. Rob's book is available now anywhere that you buy books. I will leave this down below. Thank you so much, HarperCollins, for trusting me with this proof copy. It's already been so well loved and I can't wait to read this again. So back to our timeline. In 2020, Taylor shared that when she attempted to negotiate with Scooter, even the very idea of working together came with an ironclad NDA that would prevent her from ever speaking ill of Scooter, which I think is really important to keep in mind when we think about the other clients that Scooter has and the fact that they've never spoken out in support of Taylor, or rather in criticism of Scooter. We have to consider the possibility that they are in fact legally not able to. A weird side note, Scooter's name is also Scott. So we have Scott Borchetta, Scott Braun, and also Taylor's dad, Scott Swift. There are too many Scotts and only one good one. So when we talk about masters, what does that mean? Essentially, the song as we know it, the way that it exists on a CD, on a digital file, that finished output is the master recording. That is what Big Machine and then Scooter went on to own. However, Taylor still owns the intellectual property, the IP of these songs. So that essentially means the lyrics and the melody. So for example, the label essentially own the finished cooked meal, right? The final output, the product that is made, that they can sell. However, Taylor was the original chef. She still has all of the original ingredients and she owns the recipe. So she can go and recreate that dish all over again and make it even better this time. So then, as Kelly Clarkson iconically suggested, Taylor's only real option then was to go and re-record her own work from scratch. Now, Taylor bravely made this choice to walk away from everything she had ever created, all of those relationships, all of her work. I can't even fathom how frustrating this must have felt. She left behind her life's work to start fresh. To quote Taylor's song, "It's time to go. He's got my past frozen behind glass, but I've got me." Now, this is not the first time we've seen this done. The most notable example for me is JoJo, as in the 2000s pop R&B icon JoJo, not JoJo Siwa of Dance Mums and whatever this dance was. JoJo was also sadly completely screwed over by her label in an even worse way than Taylor was. She signed her record deal at the age of just 12 and was just completely taken advantage of by a label that essentially sabotaged her career. If you ever wonder how and why someone with so much talent from a young age, so much success, kind of just dropped off the musical map, sadly this is why. JoJo's story is also really worth looking into. There are some great video essays on YouTube that I will link down below. But JoJo ultimately also made the really brave choice to go and re-record her music for the fans because her label were not allowing anyone to listen to it.
If I covered my own material, those would be new masters. That was a scary thing to do because there wasn't really a precedent for it. I'm really happy to see artists, particularly someone as powerful and ubiquitous as Taylor Swift, shifting the narrative and being empowered to say, this is my property. This is my creation and this is my legacy.
It truly breaks my heart, and I know that Taylor and JoJo aren't by any means the only instances of this, and that's why both of these women are such fierce advocates for industry change.
There's so many people who want to be musicians. If I can say something loudly that somehow absorbs in people's consciousness that they need to really stand up for themselves and they need to fight for their right to own their work, people are going to try to take it from them their whole careers. So they need to know what's theirs.
You don't know the music industry until you know it. And because I have learned what I've learned, I really just want to make things better for other people. And I want that to start at the record deal in the contract.
So while the aim of the re-recording is to essentially create a somewhat carbon copy that fans can seamlessly swap out the nostalgic originals for, it also provides an opportunity to improve upon them. Obviously, this is a very frustrating process that no one would want to go through, but I think the main benefit here is that with time in the industry working on her craft, Taylor has only grown. As a lifelong fan, I will be the first to say Taylor has always been a phenomenal songwriter, genuinely since childhood, and since she's just re-recording the same songs, that's never been an issue. But vocally, she has improved leaps and bounds across her career. life. Growing up, when I was listening to Self-Titled, Fearless, I never noticed an issue or would have said that she was anything other than a fantastic, amazing singer. It was only when I heard Taylor's version of Fearless that I was blown away by her vocal advancements and the strength she has now in her voice. It's kind of wild if you go back and listen side by side to some Fearless songs. The strength she has now compared to when she was just starting out is unlike most artists performing today, and that's one of the best upgrades we get to witness when listening to the Taylor's versions.
So far, of the ones I've recorded, the older music, my voice was so teenaged, and sometimes when I hear my older music and my older young teenage voice, it makes me feel like I'm a different singer now. It's been the most fun to go back and re-record ones that I feel like I could actually possibly improve upon the song.
Solid ground, solid ground, solid ground, it's holy ground. Because these things will change, because these things will change. I wore a dress, you wore a dark gray t-shirt. I wore a dress, you wore a dark gray t-shirt.
So in addition to re-recording the pre-existing songs for the new Taylor's versions, she also added what is known as vault tracks. These are songs that were written way back when the original albums were made, and for one reason or another just simply did not make the cut. Most artists end up having to leave songs on the cutting room floor just for album length, thematic genre, or cohesiveness, or honestly reasons we may never even know about. In Taylor's case, as I said earlier, she is first and foremost a songwriter. So as you can imagine, these vaults are full to the brim of not just scraps and half-baked offcuts, but truly top-tier, fully formed, Billboard Top 100 worthy bangers. And we now get to hear them. To me, this is one of the most brilliant and genius moves of her career thus far. Obviously, many fans would have organically supported Taylor in switching to buying or streaming Taylor's versions out of pure loyalty for her and a desire to support what seems morally right in solidarity with artists owning their own work. But by adding these songs that are new, never before heard, for the most part with a few exceptions, that match that era and often unearth new details or stories about a time that is so nostalgic for us, an album that we love. Not only does this completely devalue the original version of the album, which now contains fewer songs, it also drums up so much excitement for the new version. Naturally, you can imagine the media frenzy and online discourse around what are these brand new stories that we get to hear from the old Taylor. For example, one of our first vault tracks, Mr. Perfectly Fine, gave us a new angle to the original love story between Taylor and Joe Jonas, her first public romance when they were both teenagers. It also contained the lyric casually cruel, a phrase she would end up shelving and using 4 years later on the album Red as one of the most iconic, recognizable lines in what is widely known to be her magnum opus, All Too Well. On Speak Now, Taylor's version, when Emma falls in love, called back to her close friendship with Emma Stone, who was dating Kieran Culkin at the time, and Is It Over Now referenced a moment we all had witnessed years ago but never really heard Taylor address in a photograph of her on a boat, leaving after a long period of time spent with Harry Styles. Due to Taylor's incredibly personal songwriting nature, as well as her secret messages hidden in the album, she somewhat created an unquenchable thirst amongst us fans for details about her love life. And whether that is a good or bad thing, it is 100% a huge reason for the success of her career and our love for these songs. I'm not saying that I don't think Taylor would be as successful as she is if no one cared about her love life. I'm more referring here to the vault songs and how exciting it is to hear these stories from Taylor's life, because these eras are so clear in our minds. Like, it's the same reason everyone is so excited to hear the Reputation vault songs, because we know what was going on in Taylor's life at that time. The most valuable vault track of all was the long-awaited, often doubted 10-minute version of the fan favorite All Too Well. Taylor had mentioned once or twice, kind of offhand throughout her career, that this song originally began as a 10-minute version, but naturally had to be cut down for time.
The 10-minute version of All Too Well is what was originally written for the song before I had to cut it down to a normal length song.
And the finished product that ended up making the album Red was a still lengthy but much more considerable 5-minute version. Now, because this had piqued our interest and because Swifties are not often known to let things go, we really bugged Taylor about this 10-minute version, relentlessly.
My fans would not let it go. I'd be doing an interview for something else, albums later, and they'd be like, where's the 10-minute version? Where is it?
yet we had done the same thing years prior with a song called Sparks Fly that Taylor had written and performed during her debut self-titled era, but never put on the album. We pestered her at meet and greets, online, in person, just enough that when she put out Speak Now in 2010, Sparks Fly was on there. Naturally, this gave us just enough delusional hope to think maybe we could be lucky enough that this could happen again. And miraculously, we were. After the, I would say, unexpected success of the first re-recording, Feel as Taylor's version, Taylor then gave her cherished yet critically underappreciated album Red the rollout it truly deserved. Not only did we get vault tracks, a music video, and late night interviews, we also finally got to hear the famous 10-minute version with a short film accompanying it to boot. This time period and pop culture success is what I see as being the real start of Taylor's just ascension through the stratosphere of pop culture. She's obviously always been very successful and has had multiple breakthrough career moments, but this was a time when it felt like not just fans paying attention, but maybe the whole world. So when you see a song that says Taylor's version next to it, now you know what that means, and also why we are so proud to support her in listening to that version. I think it's definitely fair to have, you know, preferences. There are some versions of songs that will always feel nostalgic. For example, one of Taylor's versions has new, changed, updated lyrics to a song because I think Taylor felt the old version no longer reflected her worldview. I am of course referring to Better Than Revenge and Better Than Revenge Taylor's version.
She's better known for the things that she does on the mattress. Whoa. He wasn't marked to the things she was holding the matches. Whoa.
There are also slight sonic differences. I'm not quite sure if they legally have to sound slightly different. I believe that is the case, but if anyone with more musical and legal knowledge can confirm that for me, please let me know. Essentially, these aren't a rewriting of her narrative, but a revisiting, a retelling of her own stories. Now, years later, looking back on her girlhood with everything that she's learned. As fans, we are all kind of desperately hoping to see a documentary chronicling this journey. Personally, there is so much I would love to hear from Taylor, like emotionally how this has felt for her. It's such a huge undertaking, and not just in terms of hours in the studio, but emotionally revisiting these old wounds, even just the underlying core knowledge of I don't own my work. Like, I just think this has to be a tough thing to have had to have done. The process of writing and releasing music, I would expect to be quite cathartic, but I don't know how revisiting it all these years later and reopening those old wounds that you maybe felt you had overcome might feel. I'd also just love to know things like how did she choose which order to re-release them in, and how did she pick which songs got to make it out of the vault. On a more personal level, I would love to have a word with her about not releasing Drama Queen, but you know, I can't be greedy. Now, in addition to reclaiming her own work and fighting to regain what she had created, Taylor has also become an advocate for new and emerging artists to have more rights with their music too. I mean that in terms of advocating for them to own their work from the beginning within their contracts, but also in fighting for better conditions in the industry worldwide. No better is this exemplified than with her fights against Spotify and Apple Music.
We now find ourselves fully immersed in a vast frontier that wasn't around last decade, the streaming world.
On June 21st of 2015, Taylor published a letter on her Tumblr called To Apple, Love Taylor, and it read as follows. I write this to explain why I'll be holding back my album 1989 from the new streaming service, Apple Music. I feel this deserves an explanation because Apple has been and will continue to be one of my best partners in selling music and creating ways for me to connect with my fans. I respect the company and the truly ingenious minds that have created a legacy based on innovation and pushing the right boundaries. I'm sure you are aware that Apple Music will be offering a free 3-month trial to anyone who signs up for the service. I'm not sure that you know that Apple Music will not be paying writers, producers, or artists for those 3 months. I find it shocking, disappointing, and completely unlike this historically progressive and generous company. This is not about me. Thankfully, I'm on my 5th album and can support myself, my band, crew, and entire management team by playing live shows. This is about the new artist or band that has just released their first single and will not be paid for its success. This is about the young songwriter who just got his or her first cut and thought that the royalties from that would get them out of debt. This is about the producer who works tirelessly to innovate and create, just like the innovators and creators of Apple, pioneering in their field, but will not get paid for a quarter of a year's worth of plays on his or her songs. These are not the complaints of a spoiled, petulant child. These are the echoed sentiments of every artist, writer, and producer in my social circles who are afraid to speak up publicly because we admire and respect Apple so much. We simply do not respect this particular call. I realize that Apple is working towards a goal of of paid streaming. I think that is beautiful progress. We know how astronomically successful Apple has been, and we know that this incredible company has the money to pay artists, writers, and producers for that 3-month trial period, even if it is free for the fans trying it out. 3 months is a long time to go unpaid, and it is unfair to ask anyone to work for nothing. I say this with love, reverence, and admiration for everything else Apple has done. I hope that soon I can join them in the progression towards a streaming model that seems fair to those who create this music. I think this could be the platform that gets it right. But I say to Apple, with all due respect, it's not too late to change this policy and change the minds of those in the music industry who will be deeply and gravely affected by this. We don't ask you for free iPhones. Please don't ask us to provide you with our music for no compensation. Taylor. I think this was just such a brave thing to do, lending her voice and position of power to those who would be greatly impacted by these conditions, even when it wouldn't make a difference to her at all.
What advice would you give to anyone who wants to become a singer?
Get a good lawyer.
But less than 24 hours after publishing this, Apple stated she was in fact right and agreed to change their policy. As a result of this, Taylor said she would happily upload her album 1989 to the platform, finally finding a way that she felt was ethical for her music to be streamed. Honestly, women get shit done.
What's the bravest thing you've ever done?
Writing the Apple Music letter.
Most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Writing the Apple Music letter.
Now, prior to this, in 2014, Taylor had actually removed her entire catalog from Spotify over concerns around the business model and how artists would be impacted. She said, "In my opinion, the value of an album is and will continue to be based on the amount of heart and soul an artist had bled into a body of work and the financial value that artists and their labels place on their music when it goes out into the marketplace. Piracy, file sharing, and streaming have shrunk the numbers of paid album sales drastically, and every artist handled this blow differently."
I just so firmly believe in the idea of an album as a body of work, and the fact that they've chosen to purchase it fully, like as an album. It's really cool, guys.
Strangely, at the time, Taylor was called greedy for this move. Greedy and overreacting, which ultimately, being a woman, I guess is not that surprising.
There's a different vocabulary for men and women in the music industry, right?
Give me an example.
Okay, a man does something, it's strategic. A woman does the same thing, it's calculated. A man is allowed to react. A woman can only overreact.
We have to remember that this was such an ever-changing landscape. The music industry had moved from vinyls to cassettes to CDs to suddenly illegal online piracy, aka LimeWire, and now a new frontier of digital streaming subscription services. Artists and fellow industry people had no idea how this might work out, and I think it's quite a similar situation we see with things like film and TV subscription services like Netflix, Disney. They do not at all operate in the same way that free-to-air or like paid cable TV used to. I mean, we all know about the Friends cast and the contract they got with their residuals every time a show is in syndication. For those that don't know, anytime an episode of Friends is shown on TV, the cast and likely crew and producers, anyone that worked on it, still now to this day receive money and will continue to do so. However, if you watch that show on a streaming service, they don't get that. This is just the way that those models are set up, and is, you know, kind of the answer to the reason why don't we see great rom-coms anymore? Why don't we see 24 episode seasons of shows anymore? The way that we consume media now is just completely different. We are paying for a package subscription rather than the product itself. So today, streaming music on platforms like Apple Music and Spotify is the chosen practice, as it is much more affordable and convenient than buying every single album of a song you might want to listen to. The fact that Taylor helped to create the standard under which both of these two powerhouses operate has helped and will continue to help millions of artists to come.
I still don't think that record contracts or producers' agreements have fully caught up. And I hope that in the next decade, we can keep searching for the right solution for producers, songwriters, and creators.
I think the moral of the story here is Taylor Swift is a trailblazer and will likely continue to shape the musical landscape as we know it. Between fighting the good fight against musical monoliths, taking back ownership of her own work, and creating space for others to do the same, or even dropping surprise, genre-pivoting albums that become overnight successes, Taylor's journey is simply a joy to follow. Largely because you never know what she might do next, but you can guarantee it's going to be pretty great. Well, thank you guys for joining me in class today about Taylor's industry impact and cultural relevance, shall we say. Obviously, this does not even scratch the surface of Taylor's career or impact, but I thought there were some of the key things to know before we dive a little bit deeper on her music itself. If there's any key info that I didn't mention today, please talk about it in the comments. I love nothing more than when you guys talk to me and talk to each other, and I just love that opportunity to engage with you guys. I'm just really excited about this new course that we're embarking upon here. And I hope that it can become a place to share knowledge, share our joy, and maybe provide a bit of a distraction from whatever it is that you need distracting from in life right now, because I know there is a bit of that going around for all of us. So a reminder that your homework, aka required reading, is this bad boy. I promise you will in fact enjoy it. Thank you all for coming to class today. Automatic A+ for your attendance, but there is extra credit points for class participation. So get talking in the comments down below. Give the video a like if you want to, and let me know what else you would like to see on the syllabus. Thank you all again so much for watching and subscribing. I truly love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Is this what it feels like?